The report about Amazon putting in a last-minute bid, I think about AI. It is about content. It is about data. And I just wonder, how might a social media site like TikTok make sense in an AI world, whether it's at Amazon or somewhere else?
Well, in terms of Amazon's bid, that's not something I'm able to comment about, obviously.
No memos from corporate about this?
Nothing at all. I walked into the studio and I saw the news. So, but ByteDance has been a really good customer of AWS, and honestly, a customer that's actually used a lot of compute and is now using a lot of AI. And one of the things we're excited about what they've been doing, and unrelated to any of the news that you might be reporting, is they've used a lot of the custom accelerators that we've built at AWS. One of the challenges with AI is how do we get the cost down? How do we make sure that it is affordable for every company out there that thinks they could use it in some way that would change their product? But really, we have to be able to get the cost down. And one of the ways we can do that is through things like you saw with DeepSeek, improving the models, making the models simpler, making them easier to train. But the other way is to build different silicon, build silicon that's able to get the cost down for customers. And so ByteDance has been a big user of our custom silicon in the very early days of Inferentia, which improved inference models. They've also consumed Graviton, which is our custom ARM chip. And they're also using our Trainium chips as well. So we work very closely with ByteDance from that point of view.
How do you make sure that you keep a company such as ByteDance as a customer when there is so much competition in this space? I mean, think about it from the perspective of the three biggest players. You, of course, Microsoft Azure, and then Google Cloud. And we've seen a big investment. We'll talk about that for Google just in the last couple of weeks. How do you make sure that you stay ahead, in your view, of the pack and keep these customers from jumping ship?
I think there are a few things. I think one of it is innovation. The cloud has just brought an enormous amount of innovation into the corporate world.
But some people might look at this and say, is this a commodity at this point?
I don't think so, because my next point would be execution. And execution really, really matters. It's one thing to say we have the hardware.
What does that mean? I feel like,
absolutely.
Like executives throw out execution all the time. What does it mean in your world?
Well, what it does mean is, running AI, for example. So the servers behind AI, whether you're running an NVIDIA GPU or you're running some custom silicon, such as our Trainium chip, they're not easy machines to run. They're incredibly complicated. They're incredibly hard to make sure that they're highly available. They also need incredibly advanced networking capabilities. So we've had to build network capabilities to be able to bring hundreds of thousands of these accelerators together in a single cluster. Now, at AWS, we spend a lot of time making sure that we provide those clusters and those systems to be as highly available as possible for our end customer. And so when you choose your technology, if you're running on a solution, whether it's something you built yourself or a provider, and that's not working for you, that's what I mean by execution. It has to be flawless and it has to work. And at AWS, we think that's one of the ways we're able to differentiate ourselves.
Are you at all worried about overbuilding? Like, obviously with DeepSeek, the narrative all of a sudden, like in a heartbeat, switched in terms of, well, maybe we can do this more cheaply. Maybe it doesn't require the build out that we've been talking about for more than 2 years.
Yeah.
Are you worried about overbuilding? Are we possibly in a bubble when it comes to
Well, I think from our
build?
point, certainly. Well, from our point of view, we're not really listening to sort of the narrative. I think the narrative is very interesting. We've been following it. What we're listening to is customers, and what do customers want to do with AI? There's certainly no shortage of customer demand for the chips, right? Whether it's NVIDIA chips or our own custom silicon, you've seen partnerships.
No doubt about that. Demand, and the demand is smart because it's being put to use and it's going to be monetized.
Yeah.
No worry.
Well, I mean, the other thing is you have to make good investments. And so the trick is to say, what are we building in terms of customer demand? What are we building in terms of the narrative? And I think from a customer demand point of view, it's very, very strong. We expect it to continue to grow, and we're very comfortable with the investments that we're making.
So it brings us back to the way that we started this conversation. We're speaking to you on Wednesday, April 2nd, ahead of President Trump's announcement that's set to come at 4 p.m. Wall Street time from Washington, D.C. So we don't know what he's going to say at this point. How do you watch an event such as that? How do you watch tariffs? How does that affect your world?
Yeah, I think one of the things when you're running what is probably one of the largest supply chains in the world, right? We have to think about every single component, whether it costs a few cents or it's millions of dollars within our supply chain.
You're talking about the AWS side,
the AWS,
not the retail side.
Not the retail side,
which is certainly effective.
The retail side is certainly helpful to us and has taught us a lot about how to run an effective supply chain.
Right.
And so on the AWS side, running a supply chain, we've got to think about every single possible outcome. The sort of things that you're talking about now with regards to tariffs or global uncertainty, whatever it might be, we're going to think about how that would affect our supply chain. And we've put mitigating steps in place, and we're thinking about these as we build to make sure that any outcome means that we can still serve our customers.